Hello and welcome to a quick demonstration of the Slice Micro data acquisition system from DTS. The Slice Micro is a highly modular, very portable data acquisition system that is comprised of a base layer, which is fundamental to all configurations, and then a series of transducer layers that we put on top of the base layer to build up a system. Each layer has 3 channels, and we can put up to 8 layers on top of a base, so a maximum of 24 channels per stack. We have an up and down connector. This is how we connect to the computer for setups and for communicating to the PC, and also downloading data after we've acquired signals. And then the other connector, the down connector, is used to connect to things like power, trigger signals, status light, and these kinds of things. As I mentioned, on top of the base layer you put transducer layers, and in this case we have a bridge layer which has 3 connectors, and this is where we would plug in 3 bridge type sensors. And we have other types of sensor layers as well. This one is a sensor for supporting IEPE types of transducers, such as accelerometers and microphones that use ICP power. Okay, so that's what the hardware looks like. I'm going to use this system for demonstration purposes. This is a 3-channel system, so it has a base layer and it has a bridge layer with 3 channels, and we have it mounted on a heatsink block. Okay, so connecting the Slice is pretty straightforward. On the up connector, we communicate to the computer through USB, so I'll plug in the cable into the up connector. It's actually much easier than I'm making it look. And then on the down connector, we will connect to what we call the Slice end of chain device, which is how we can access things like power and trigger signals and status signals and other things. But we can connect direct to a battery, or we can go to an AC/DC power supply if we want to work off of wall power. But I went ahead and plugged into power here, and you'll see on the side of the unit there are a couple of LEDs, and these LEDs will start blinking as the system is powered up and becomes alive and establishes communication with the computer. And once we reach a kind of a blue steady state signal, that means that we're good to go. So what I'm going to do next is I'll go ahead and connect a transducer. This is a flex beam. It's got a strain gauge mounted to it. I'll go ahead and connect this to channel 1 on the bridge layer of the Slice. And we've got a sensor connected. Okay, so now that we have the Slice data acquisition system connected to the computer via the USB cable, and we have a sensor connected to one of the channels, we'll go ahead and initiate the Sliceware software. So on your desktop you should have a shortcut if you've installed the software, and now I'll double click on that, and Sliceware is up and going. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to interrogate the USB connection and see if there is a data acquisition system connected. And indeed, you can see on the right side here that a USB connection has been established to a Slice system. It has a base serial number here of 371, and it has a bridge layer, and that's 3 channels on that bridge layer, and connected to one of the channels is the strain gauge. Alright, so on the left side of the screen you'll see this kind of a scroll down window here. That's your sensor database. So if you have other sensors that you use and you want to keep them in a library, this is where they go. And then below that is a screen that is specific to a particular sensor that you might have connected. So if I click on anything in the sensor database, it brings up that sensor information. I'm going to go ahead and go back over to the right side of the screen here and click on this channel 1 on the bridge and click on the strain gauge, and here again, if you go to the left side, you'll see we've got specific information about that strain gauge, including things like serial number and the type of sensor it is, sensitivity, the sensor type, excitation voltage, and so on. Okay, so we have our sensor recognized, and we're ready to go. One last thing, I'll talk just in general terms about the user interface of Sliceware. At the top of the screen, you'll see a number of sort of tabs here. The way you navigate through Sliceware is you basically go from left to right in sequence, and then by the time you've made it all the way to the right, you've made it to you've completed a test, and you should have your data exported and all completed and properly handled. All right, but we've finished the Prepare tab now, and this is generally where we set up sensors. I'm going to go now next to Diagnostics, and Diagnostics is sort of a calibration routine that Sliceware uses to just make sure that the setup parameters and the sensors all make sense, and they are checked against predefined tolerances that are acceptable. We do this just to make sure that there's not a bad sensor, maybe a bad connection, or a bad value that doesn't make sense. So it's just a precautionary thing before we actually do a test, and it can save a lot of time in the long run. So it's waiting for me to go ahead and initiate this diagnostics routine. I'm going to go ahead and press the stack icon. You can see now it's performing diagnostics, and it's doing these various checks, like checking excitation voltage, checking noise, checking offset and range, and so on, depending on the sensor type. So we finished the diagnostics now, and in general, green, actually not in general, green is always good. So if you pass the diagnostics test, there should be green highlighted areas here that say pass. If there was any kind of a failure, you'd see a red block, and it would denote the failure. And then if you wanted to understand specifically what failed, on the right side here is a table, and you can see the diagnostics values that were measured and those against the upper and lower acceptable tolerances. Okay, so we passed the diagnostics routine. Next we'll go to real-time. And real-time puts up a kind of a strip chart graph that's actually looking at data at real-time right now. I'm going to go ahead and flex the strain gauge sensor because that's what's being showed here. So I've got a beam and I've got a strain gauge attached to it, and I'm flexing that beam, and we can see deflections moving like we should. So that's all good. So you can do this for each sensor that you have connected. It's a way to check out to make sure what you're looking at makes sense before you actually run the test. Okay, now I'm going to shift over to the Acquire tab. Okay, and in the Acquire tab, this is where we actually prepare our data acquisition using the Slice system. And so we set up things like the sample rate, which is in the top left corner here, and you see we can set anything from 5 samples a second up to 500,000 samples per second. I'm just going to go ahead and keep it at 20,000 samples per second. And then the next drop down is recorder mode. It defaults to just recorder mode, which works in essence like a tape recorder. So you press start and it records for some duration that's predefined in these windows below here. There are other types of recorder modes like circular buffer and continuous mode and hybrid mode and things like that, but I'm just going to keep it in recorder mode for now. And in recorder mode, there's no pre-triggered data. It's just you press start and then it starts to record. So, but we do have to set up a post trigger, and that's how long we want to run the test. I'm going to just say 10 seconds. And up here next is a test ID. This is the label that will be given to the data when it's stored away. I'm going to call it desk3 test. And so this is the name of the file that gets stored after a recording is complete, and this is what we'll see in the PC when the data has been extracted. And then finally, there's kind of a notes field here where you can just put in anything you like. If you want to put in some information about your test setup or the operator that's performing the test, it's an open field where you can put in data that you wish, and this gets tagged with the measurement record, and it's just a part of the metadata. All right, so we're ready to go here. I'll go ahead and go up to the top left and select ARM. And that basically prepares the slice system for data acquisition. So right now it's clearing out the flash memory of the system, and when that's finished, it'll tell us that it's armed and it hasn't triggered yet. So at this point, we could disconnect the slice system from the USB drive, and we can go ahead and connect it to our test article and connect our sensors up, and we're ready to go. At that point, it's waiting for a trigger, so you might have a switch connected to the down port on the base to initiate a start-stop command to start the recording. Or you could also have set up the system to trigger off of a level on a transducer. So if some threshold in the transducer is exceeded and you predefine what that level is in Sliceware, you can handle the triggering that way to initiate the 10-second recording. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the software to do the data recording, the triggering. So if you go to the top of the screen here, there are some controls. There's one called Start. I'm going to press that, and as soon as I press Start, it's going to just verify that this is what I want to do, and now it's starting to record. You can see recording in process. I'm going to go ahead and flex the beam, and so we get some strain gauge flexing information here. And our 10-second test is done. So it automatically downloads at that point. And what we're going to see here is a very short time window. It only recorded about half a second of data. That's because if you go to the top here and go back to the previous tab, Acquire, it only downloaded a small region, this region of interest between minus 0.5 and 0.5 seconds. So we want to actually download the entire data set. So I'm going to go ahead and say download all of the data. It's going to overwrite that previous record, and it's downloading the data. Now it's going to display our 10 seconds of data. Okay, so this is, I didn't actually start flexing the beam until about 5 seconds into the test, but this is our measurement results that are now downloaded in the PC from the slice system. Things you can do in this review tab here, you can click and drag to zoom on a signal, and so you can look at the data in more detail. You can do that as many times as you like. If you go to the right side here, you can see zoom is active, but there are other things we can do as well. There's a grab and pan. If you select that, then we can take the zoom signal and move it to a different portion of the signal while it's still zoomed in, and look at those kinds of the information on other parts of the signal. And then one more thing that we can do is we can actually choose select a point, and this initiates a cursor, and you can see it puts a crosshair on the point of the signal where I actually click the cursor button, and there you can read the time value at that point, and you can measure the amplitude of the signal. So you can move that just by clicking and dragging the mouse. You can move it to anywhere on the signal, and you get an updated time and amplitude value at that point. Okay, one last thing to show you here. There are some simple calculations you can do in Sliceware in this review screen. You access them by pressing Calculate, this little calculator icon. And then there's a drop-down menu here, and you can pick these various math functions. I'm going to choose FFT. You give it a name, because it's going to become a new signal. I'm going to call it FFT of strain. And then you select the channel. Since we only have one channel active, that's all that shows up on the list here. So I'm going to do the FFT on this strain channel. I'm going to select Add. So now we're looking at the original 10-second time waveform, but if we want to increment to the FFT, you just go up to the top here and you select Next, and there's the FFT of that strain signal. Not pretty, but that's what it is. Okay. So that's it for the review screen. The next screen we'll go to, and this will be the last one for this demonstration, we'll go to data. In data, this is basically how we take measured signals that are now stored in DTS binary format and how we might export these data files into other formats. So the first thing you do is you go here and you select a data file. I'm going to look for the desk3 test that we just did. Okay, so that's selected. There's some buttons here. You can choose if you only want to export a certain portion of the signal, maybe a couple of seconds, between maybe at the beginning, the first 2 seconds, or between time 2.5 seconds and 3 seconds or whatever. You can select ranges here, and those will just be the only sections that will be exported. Makes a smaller data file if you only want to export just relevant information. And then there's something called threshold ROI, and it's just what it sounds like. It basically will just, you set a level in that you only want to export data that's above that particular level. So say you only wanted to export stuff that's above 50 microstrain, you would do that, and then only signals that are above that, only numbers above that get exported. Okay, I'm going to export the whole 10-second signal. These are the different export routines that we have. We have .csv, which is a comma delimited text file. We have diadem. We have the SOMAT format to get it into the SOMAT infield product. And then we have a few other kinds of data exports here. I'm going to go ahead and just do CSV. And now we're all set to go. Here you can choose to not filter the data or filter the data. I'm going to just leave it as filtered. So I click save, and it asks me for a file name. It defaulted to the desk3 test unfiltered and .csv format, so I'll go ahead and select that, and the file is exported. Okay, where did that file go? It went to, if I go back to my C drive, and I go to a directory called DTS. Within that directory, you'll find another directory called Sliceware. And then I'm going to the current version of Sliceware under Data, under CSV, under Unfiltered. There is our desk3 test unfiltered .csv file. So I'm going to click on that, and it will automatically open up Excel because I have it loaded on my computer. And here's the data file we just measured. So at the top, there's all the header information that was defined, and then below that, in line 20 or row 23 here, you can see the time and the amplitude information just showing up in the first 2 columns here. So that's the full exported data file for the 10 seconds. All right, that's it for the demonstration of Sliceware and the Slice system. I hope you enjoyed the demonstration, and good luck.